Good morning. If you have decided to study to become a professional hypnotherapist, continue with us in this nice project of study and learning. Hypnosis is a powerful technique with which you will be able to help and improve the quality of life of a great number of your future patients. Remember to study the description of this video, where you can find a link to free training classes with several free ebooks. The caloric profile, distribution of energy between macronutrients. In energetic terms, the caloric profile is one of the most used indexes of diet quality nowadays. It is defined as the caloric contribution of macronutrients, proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates, and alcohol if consumed, to the total energy of the diet. It is recommended that proteins contribute from 10 to 15% of total calories, lipids less than 30 to 35%, carbohydrates at least the remaining 50 to 60%, with the majority being complex carbohydrates. And disaccharides, except those from dairy products, fruits and vegetables, should not provide more than 10% of total energy. If alcohol is consumed, its caloric intake should not exceed 10% of total calories. Nowadays, in the most developed societies, the quality of the diet judged by this index is not very satisfactory, because as a consequence of the excessive consumption of foods, there is a high intake of protein and fat. As a consequence, there is a very low carbohydrate, reducing, from this point of view, the quality of the diet. However, in developing areas and in poor countries, most of the energy, up to 80%, can come from carbohydrates, mainly provided by cereals. How to calculate the calorie profile of a diet? Let's calculate the calorie profile of a diet that, for example, provides daily. It is recommended to reduce total fat, saturated fat, less than 10% of total energy, and cholesterol, less than 300 milligrams per day. Increase the intake of monosaturated fatty acids, olive oil, more than 30% of calories ingested. This will help to control weight and prevent some diseases, such as cardiovascular diseases and certain types of cancer. The weight balance of foods. The food pyramid. The first consideration to be emphasized is that should be varied. That includes foods from all food groups and in the proportions and frequency of consumption indicated in the pyramid. Consumption in moderate amounts to keep weight stable and within the recommended limits, balancing intake with what is expended through daily physical exercise is another consideration. The second consideration comes from nutrition research itself, which has repeatedly and consistently shown that the diets best suited to the objectives to be achieved by a balanced diet are those based primarily on the consumption of plant-based foods. Using plant-based foods in moderation. In short, it is recommended to maintain and promote the Mediterranean diet, that is to say, to increase the consumption of cereals, vegetables, and pulses, for their contribution of complex carbohydrates, fiber, antioxidants, nutrients and non-nutrients, minerals and vitamins. Include fish in the diet, main suppliers of polyunsaturated fatty acids of the N3 family, olive oil for its supply of fatty acids and moderating the consumption of meat and animal and hydrogenated fats. The Mediterranean diet may, therefore, be a good example of a prudent and healthy diet, one that is not only healthy, nutritious and palatable, but also helps to prevent diet-related chronic diseases. That is, one that results in lower overall mortality and a higher life expectancy and quality of life. It's also one that is not only healthy for people, but also healthy for the environment. A diet that, as a whole, because it is mainly based on the consumption of plant-based foods, can be considered a sustainable diet or environmentally friendly. Although the different components of the diet are discussed separately, it is important to remember that its goodness may be due to precisely the diet as a whole. As a whole, that is, to the optimal balance of certain foods or dietary components, and this optimal balance can be reached from very different options. The recommended weight of each portion is for guidance only. The number and size of the portion in the pyramid will depend on the energy needs of the individual, which will depend on age, sex, weight, and physical activity. Other considerations to bear in mind about the components of the Mediterranean diet: the abundance and diversity of foods of plant origin, the consumption of fruits, vegetables, cereals, bread, pulses, nuts, and olive oil as the main culinary fat, as a substitute for saturated fats, and also the moderate use of wine distinguishes the Mediterranean diet from other diets. These foods are nutrient-dense, complex carbohydrates, dietary fiber, minerals, vitamins, especially antioxidants, and bioactive non-nutrient components, and anticarcinogens, that appear to be particularly beneficial in the prevention of some chronic diseases. There is strong evidence that fiber, soluble and insoluble, from cereals, pulses, vegetables, and fruits, has a beneficial effect preventing constipation, diverticular disease, helping to regulate blood lipid profile favorably and improving glycemic control. Daily intake of fruits and vegetables is linked to reduced risk of cardiovascular disease, CVD, some types of cancer, neural tube defects, and cataracts. Playing a prominent role in the health benefits is the contribution of dietary fiber, folates, tocopherols, vitamin C, beta-carotene, and other carotenoids, lycopene, lutein, trace elements, selenium, copper, phytoestrogens, and polyphenols, other phenolic compounds, etc. Adequate intake of folates provided by these foods can reduce blood levels of homocysteine and independent risk factor for cardiovascular disease, depression, and some neurological disorders. Regular consumption of fruit and salads, the latter usually dressed with olive oil, has the additional advantage of increased availability of some nutrients, without loss through culinary processes, especially folic acid and vitamin C, and non-nutrients that are considered to be protective factors. For example, in Spain, of the 100 milligrams per day of vitamin C ingested, almost half, 62 milligrams, which is very close to the average for the EU, 62 milligrams are fewer, very close to the recommended intakes, come from foods that are eaten raw. On the other hand, the habit of consuming fruit as a dessert leaves no option to the use of other alternatives, perhaps less healthy ones. When consumed repeatedly, such as sweets and pastries, fat and simple sugar content, and in general, less nutrient dense. Recent studies have shown that frequent consumption of nuts and dried fruits, walnuts, hazelnuts, almonds, also characteristic of many areas of the Mediterranean, may have a protective action against coronary heart disease due to beneficial effects on blood lipids, hypertension, and possibly via other mechanisms. They are a good source of monounsaturated MFA and polyunsaturated PUFA fatty acids with a good lipid profile, but they also provide other components: arginine, a precursor of nitric oxide, alpha-linolenic acid, copper, potassium, phosphorus, selenium, folic acid, vitamin E, dietary fiber, of which approximately 25% is soluble fiber. Consumption of pulses can have very favorable effects on blood glucose levels compared to other foods. This, together with their protein, fiber, high nutrient density fiber, their low fat content, and the versatility of their preparations, make them a food of interest. The high intake of fatty acids provided mainly by olive oil has a beneficial effect on the distribution of plasma lipoproteins, reducing the levels of cholesterol bound to low-density lipoproteins, LDL-C, and increasing those of HDL-C. In addition, diets rich in MFA provides partial protection against lipids and lipoprotein peroxidation. They probably also decrease thrombogenic risk, platelet aggregability, and blood pressure, but the anti-atherosclerotic qualities of olive oil are not limited to its fatty acid composition. Also contains tocopherols, toconitrienol, beta-carotene, and different phenolic compounds with a potent antioxidant action. This is a difference with other vegetable oils which, however, can have high amounts of vitamin E. Olive oil acquires, if possible, greater importance not only because of its direct health benefits, but also because of its palatability and the fact that its use is generally associated with the consumption such as vegetables, nuts, and fruits, many of them in the form of salads eaten raw. Forming dishes of high nutritional value but also gastronomic, the exquisite taste of olive oil is often accompanied by the strong flavor of vinegar, which also contains antioxidants: lemon, garlic, onion, tomato, or oregano, thyme, rosemary, which are also a source of various phytochemicals, terpenes, phenolic compounds with a powerful antioxidant action. But the differential characteristics of our fat consumption are observed not only in the composition and therefore in the quality, but also consumed. And in this sense, another interesting aspect of lipid intake in Spain is that a high percentage of the total fat comes from culinary fat, with the possibility of manipulation that this entails. The visible fat is very easily modified in quantity and quality. The use of olive oil is the main culinary fat, means that the consumption of butter and margarine is low. Also, the consumption of saturated fatty acids, SFA, and trans fatty acids, TFA. TFA intake has been linked to an increase in total cholesterol of LDL-C and with a decrease in HDL-C. Experiences from Spain, Portugal, and other countries, such as Japan, regarding the consumption of fish also suggests beneficial health effects. Fish is the main supplier of polyunsaturated fatty acids of the N3 family, especially EPA and DHA, which have an effect. Food of animal or vegetable origin, solid or liquid, natural or processed, are dynamic stores of nutrients and non-nutrients which, once ingested, provide 1. Materials from which the organism can produce movement, heat, or any other form of energy, because man needs a continuous supply of energy. 2. Materials for growth, tissue repair and reproduction. 3. Substances necessary for the of the processes of energy production, growth and tissue repair. 4. Numerous non-nutritive components that act as a protective factors for chronic diseases. 5. In addition to the above functions, foods also play an important role in providing pleasure and palatability to the diet. The components of foods that perform some of these are nutrients, carbohydrates, proteins and fats or lipids, minerals and vitamins. If you're interested to continue learning about clinical hypnosis, watch our next video, The Balanced Diet, Wise or Healthy, 6-part. Remember to study the description of this video, where you can find a link to free training classes about clinical hypnosis, also free of charge. If you have questions, ask them in the comments area. About this topic and many others we'll talk about in the channel and in the videos that we'll publish. So, if you're interested, don't miss our next videos. Thank you very much.